All right. So I think this is working now. I think we're live. So hi everyone, my name is Noel Davis with World Composting, and today we're just doing a live Q&A. We're going to see who jumps on and who asks questions. Uh, if you have questions about my channel, if you have questions about worms, or if you have questions about the bins that I run. So we'll see who jumps on here, and we'll see what everyone has to say. So right now, I think we'll start with the introduction, though, that I've been doing this for quite a while now, and that I'm really trying to just broaden my horizon as far as YouTube goes, and try to bring in other people by having these live streams and giving a chance to have live feedback rather than posting a comment to one of my videos that I try to get back to. So we'll see who joins here. It looks like we might have one person that's on, but I don't know if that's just saying it's me or not. It's not showing me the participants. So with this video, I know that I was sort of a little bit late in posting that I was going to be on here today. I originally had planned to post earlier, with a thing saying, "Hey, I'm going to be going live," but lost track of the days of the week, with it being a early, late week on the start. You have January that ended sort of like right on the weekend, and I forgot all about this coming up. So hopefully, I'll get a little better at these as I go, since this is only the second time I'm trying one of these live Q&As. And I'll try to give everyone a little bit more warning building up to them as well. So looks like we've got a couple people on. If you guys have any questions, please post in the comments here. It should be live. I should be seeing comments, but I'm not seeing anything yet. Let me post something here. Let me see if this, make sure it's popping up here. It looks like it's working. Live chat should be active. It's not showing participants. We'll see here. I'm not sure. Let's just see if there's anything else I need to do on my end here to make sure that this is the live chat's working. It looks like it's enabled live chat. All right, well, we'll give this a few more seconds here and see if this starts working. If not, maybe I'll restart this and see what we can get here, because it's I'm not seeing any chats, but I see people on. So if you're on and you can see me, please post a comment now, so that way I can see what's going on, and hopefully we can have a dialogue going instead of me just talking to the screen. So, but in the meantime, I'll just talk here. I know that I've mentioned this before, but I have had fruit fly issues in my basement. I think those are finally solved. We'll see. I think dropping the temperature, in fact, why I've got this warm sweater on right now is because it's pretty chilly down here, around 62 degrees or so, which around 60 degrees, fruit fly systems, their stomachs and everything are supposed to slow down. I think at around 40 degrees, they start dying. So I can't get it down that low in here. That's a little bit hard to do, but 60 degrees I can do, and I could drop it down, maybe try to drop it down into the 50s, but that might be a little harder to keep the rest of the house warm. I don't know if I'll have too many people complaining about that. So, all right, I see 8 people on here. I'm still not seeing any chats come through at all. I don't know how to. Still not showing any participants either. Just taking a look here through the settings. I'm not seeing anything. Not seeing anything that would turn any of these chats off. Looks like everything's enabled. Let me just try turning live chat off, and then I'll turn it back on here. There we go. Now it's popping up. Okay. I don't know what was going on before. All right. Hi. So we've got Fork and Allotment on. Say hi, and CRT, hi to you as well. I don't know why it wasn't working for me, but now I can see everybody, which is good. So I can see and hear Caught this live. All right. I'm glad to see Juno VHS on as well. I'm glad to see that everyone here is able to join. I'm able to see your chats now, which is part of the point of this. So do I think cold weather really slows down red wigglers if it gets down to the 40s at night? Yes, it does. I know my parents, I had a bin that I set up at their house. It was a massive 2 foot by 4 foot bin. They only ran half of it at a time, but they ran it through the winter. And it definitely dropped in temperature, and the worms do slow down when it drops in temperature, but they can continue to work through stuff. I mean, even down, as long as it's not frozen, they'll continue to work through it. And I was amazed that actually at one point, they ran it for 6 or 7 years, this bin. At one point it froze solid. I mean, it was a solid block. And I was like, I'll bring worms over once it thaws out and we'll get it going again. And I never had to. It actually, once it thawed out, the bin itself, the worms, the cocoons in there, I'm guessing hatched. And there was tons of worms. I mean, there was more worms than I've ever seen in a system that I've had. I was shocked at how well it came back. So yes, it does slow down, but you can keep it working. And if you have your bins outside, I highly recommend adding lots of coffee grounds. They tend to have a lot of nitrogen. They're going to heat up, and they're going to help you out a lot. They're going to warm up that system and keep that, as long as it's enclosed enough and it's insulated, it'll keep it warm enough to keep it going through the winter. I mean, it was down to -6 degrees Fahrenheit at my parents' house, and their system was still going one year because they were adding so much food scraps to it, and they weren't freezing them or anything. They were just adding them as fast as they could, and it was heating up and causing that hot composting on the top, so the worms could just migrate in, eat what they want, and then kind of get away from the heat and then keep going back and forth. And it worked really well. They kept it going all winter long. So yeah, so a solid block. Yes, it was a solid block of ice. I mean, I really thought that there'd be nothing left. I mean, it had dropped down into I think the teens in Fahrenheit, by the way, for anyone from other countries. I know that in the US here, we use Fahrenheit instead of Celsius, but it was below 0 degrees Celsius for a good month, and it froze solid because they were on vacation somewhere and they hadn't put any food in it. It did freeze solid, but they came right back as soon as they started adding food. I was quite surprised. Is black soldier fly larva harmful to worms? From everything I have read, it is not. This is black soldier flies are supposed to be a really great composting tool as well. There's lots of different ways to compost. Black soldier flies are a larva that actually forms and eats, and they eat apparently meat, and they eat like everything. And apparently the frass or the leftovers, while also good for plants, also can be used as worm food, I've read as well. I've never tried it because I do all my composting in my house, and the last thing I'd want to do is, bring in a bunch of bugs into my house that could get loose that would cause all sorts of problems. So I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon. But I have heard of other people having fantastic success with them, and they have systems. And I've actually, I know people that run chicken coops, and they feed a lot of their food scraps to their chicken coops. And they've debated on doing that before, like having these larvae of these black soldier fly larvae that then you can feed to your chickens of, and to give them a different type of protein. It's a different food, and kind of keep it more natural. So it is something that you can do. So as far as adding it to the worms, as far as I know, yes, black soldier fly larvae, it should be harmless to the worms. They're just going to outcompete them possibly for food. So there's actually a fruit fly flying around right now in my basement. Even though I think they're gone, there's still always a couple left. So what do I do with all the compost? All right, Juno VHS. So I use it in my yard. I actually bought a brand new house that I had built. It was through Beezer Homes was the company that built it. They built this brand new community, and it was built on top of what was originally a golf course. And in the process, I've lived here for 13 years now. And in the process, they stripped off 2 feet of soil because it was on a golf course. And there was no topsoil. It was 100% rocks and 100% clay. And the soil was dead. I mean, it was just completely dead. And they were required to strip off the soil because of the community around here saying this was a golf course. They used tons of fertilizers and chemicals and pesticides, and they were worried about the people buying the homes here for, whether the soil would be safe or not. So that's why they required it. But I use a lot of it in my yard. I've been working it into the soil. I've been trying to bring the soil back. I have worms now in my soil, which I never. I like there was dead. I mean, there was nothing in the soil. It was just 100% clay that was solid mud during the summer when it would rain and then dry out. I mean, I couldn't get grass to grow. I couldn't get anything to grow. And it's slowly come back as I've added more and more compost from my bins. And I just sort of mix it into the soil. I put it on top, and like in other areas, I'll kind of dig up the grass a little bit, throw some underneath, and I'll put the grass back down. But that's what I've been doing with it. This is the first spring that I'm planning to really plant a garden, and I'm going to really try it with a real garden that I'm going to have probably on the side of my house. I will cover that in my videos if I actually get around to it. But that is the plan, is to actually have a garden. So I do have a lot of compost. I also have a lot of trees that I'm still trying to grow. I mean, all the trees here are brand new. I mean, this was clear cut. There was nothing here. It was just dirt when we moved in. Everything was planted, and a lot of the stuff died because of the fact that there was nothing in the soil for it. So that's what I use my compost for. All right, so Patrick O'Brien, best worms for composting, red wigglers or night crawlers? What's the difference between blue worms and red wigglers? Thanks. Okay. Red wigglers are probably your best bet. And the reason why is that they take a huge tolerance of conditions from highs to lows. They are kind of small. You can put them in almost any system. They don't tend to escape. They don't even want to leave, really. I mean, like my bins, as I've shown, they have holes, these half-inch, or not half-inch, I guess quarter-inch holes in them. They all stay in there. I might find one or two on the sides, but maybe. And typically that's because they go up to the lid and they'll go around to the other side of on the lip of the lid, and they'll fall out that way. They're not even going out through the holes. So red wigglers are probably your best. Blue worms are supposed to be great, or I have European night crawlers. They're supposed to be good. European night crawlers are supposed to be a little bit lower temperature. They're bigger. They need more space. Those aren't bad things, but it depends what you're using. If you're wanting for fishing, European night crawlers are the way to go. They're a big size. They apparently really are good on a hook. They thrash like crazy, and they apparently will for about 5 minutes from what I've read. I haven't tried fishing with them. That is one of actually my things I'm hoping to do next, is to go fishing maybe this spring and summer with my kids. But they're really good for that. They will go through food. I've heard African night crawlers burn through food. I don't have any to try. My basement's probably a little cold. They prefer a hotter temperature. Blue worms, I've heard that they tend to wander. They're really good, but I think I had blue worms at one point. When I did my first order, they all immediately just climbed out of the bin and died on the floor. And I had left a light on in there and everything. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I found out that the company that I bought from typically ships out blue worms, and they all just died on the floor. I mean, I could not do anything to keep them in. The second the light was off, if the bulb died or anything, they just immediately crawled out and died. And it was within 3 weeks I'd lost all of them. So that, I'm not saying blue worms are bad. I think they're just more temperamental, might be a little harder to keep. I've also heard that they wander when it rains. They really go to wander around when it starts raining outside. They can hear that thunder and stuff, and they just want to go out, which is, not great for inside a basement. In a house or outside a house, they might actually work really well. So, but I tend to use, I think the red wigglers are some of the best. Have I found any issue mixing worm type causing any issues, or will they live in harmony? This is from Cheap David Santos. I think that they would work fine. One might outcompete the other. They typically like slightly different systems. I think the reds, they prefer a more leaf litter. The European night crawlers, I think, are fine and more densely packed. They're kind of tougher worms. They from everything I've read, they live together just fine. They won't intermingle or breed. In my bin that I showed for where I store my castings, I have a mixture in there, and they seem to be doing just fine. I mean, like, I can't get all the cocoons out and everything, so they're multiplying in there, and they're fine. So it's fine to mix them. Yeah, I'm trying to restore the soil here as much as possible, and I've actually I'm hoping to eventually produce enough where I can give some to some of my neighbors run gardens that they've been buying. They talked to me a little bit. I told them, don't buy fertilizers, buy compost. We have a great system here. I live in Maryland. We have a great leaf composting system in a good portion of the state. And they sell it in the stores pretty cheap at like a couple dollars for like a 30 or 40 pound bag or something like that. Like, buy that and mix it into your soil. Collect leaves that you can find, which are few and far between since we don't have big trees here, but find leaves, mix those into your soil. Don't buy fertilizers, because those are not going to help your soil. What's going to do is you're putting all those nutrients in. that sits there and gets absorbed and it's gone, and then you have to add more. You want compost, you want organic things in your soil that are going to help build soil, so it will then take care of itself. You want that microbiology in the soil is what's important, not the nutrients itself necessarily to start with. So that's why I am trying to mix that stuff in. All right, Barry G's, I'm curious about your fly problem. Have you checked the flies and confirmed that they are fruit flies? I have a problem with fungus gnats, and the normal fruit fly type remedies don't help. I am 100% sure that these are fruit flies. I might have some fungus gnats, but if I do, I'm not seeing them nearly as much. The fruit flies are bigger, and that's how I could tell. Also, they really love the vinegar solution that I have out. I find them in there quite frequently. Now, for fungus gnats, that BTI solution, the stuff that's supposed to attack the larva, that's like a nematode or something, that should work really well. It says it will get rid of fungus gnats on the container. It works with fruit flies, I've heard people say, and it did seem to work somewhat for me, but I've heard it works really well with fungus gnats, and I would highly recommend doing that. I think a lot of people actually add them to their bin without even being prompted, figuring that way they never have an issue with fungus gnats. And it is organic, which I did not know until I started doing research into it, that according to the EPA in the United States, I can't say everywhere, so I'm going to just say in the United States, it is organic according to them. Now, it should say it on the container. The container doesn't say it, but I can't, I'm not going to sit there and start searching for other brands just to test it out. But yes, I almost guarantee that it's fruit flies that I have. So, and they are getting better, especially with the temperature drop and all the different remediation techniques that I'm using. And I will say I have other bins that are open just the same, that have Coco Coir or Coir and pine shavings and hardwood pellets, and those are not getting the issues. I'm not seeing fruit flies in there. I'm not seeing any issues with them. And I think that those materials maybe repel them in some way. Whereas the cardboard systems I have tend to have a lot of them. And they tend, like, even unless you really bury it deep, I find that it just doesn't do anything. Whereas with the other systems, I mean, in a 10-gallon tote, only like an inch of hardwood pellets, and it's like no fruit flies. So, I don't know if there's something with that, but I'm not gonna breed fruit flies to test it out. But it does seem to be that the cardboard seems to lure them in a little bit more. So I think the cold was making mine escape. I have a little bus bin with like 1 pound of red wigglers. I don't know if cold would make them escape. There might be something else. Now, I have found that heat will make them escape. So I know that I ran a 10-gallon tote with just coffee grounds, cardboard, and crushed eggshell. And I didn't think about it at the time, but it always felt warm. And I think that they were crawling up the sides trying to get away from that heat. So you might want to check the heat and see if it's actually warm inside. Because when you add food, it should start to kind of hot compost a little bit as those microbes build, and it could cause heat, which is making them try to escape, which is why you tend to feed in sections, like one side and then the other side. That way they have room to move around and kind of find that right zone for them. You don't want to just feed in the entire system and have the entire system heat up and kill them, which can happen. So, hi, I'm Ed from Istanbul. Glad to see you. I love it. I love seeing people from other countries really join. I think that's just amazing how connected we are. For everything. So it's quite amazing how, with the technology we have today, that we can get people from all over the world and have a conversation and try to learn from each other and give knowledge back and forth. Because I mean, it's one of those things that really is amazing today that 20 years ago we really didn't have. I mean, I remember as a kid, my dad traveling, and it'd be like, he's calling, and we have to be on the phone for only like 10, 15 minutes because it's like $1.50 a minute. And and nowadays it's like, I want to talk to somebody from Japan. Oh, let me just jump online. It's amazing to see that. And thank you for joining. I'm glad to see everyone joining here from other countries as well. All right, so you're saying you glued a screen door mesh over it and cut a flap in the center so they couldn't escape, and that worked great. Yeah, that actually works really well. I've also found that what I've done in the past with some of my bins for fruit flies and stuff as well is I actually will take a white cotton t-shirt, and stretch it over the top, and then wrap bungee cords around it. And that way it's elastic on the top, and it's really stretched tight. Air can go in and out just fine. Worms, bugs, anything else can't. And that works really well for some of these systems as well. I haven't needed it in years, but I have done that in the past. As I actually was more testing, trying to dry it out and also at the same time prevent bugs. But I found that it's just easier to just leave the top off now because I just typically don't have these bug issues that I've had this time. So, but no, that's a great idea to use screen. Screen is inexpensive and it's a great way to do stuff like that. So if you were just spreading it around, like you said, so maybe, so you live in California. So yeah, spreading it around. I mean, like the key is you want to do that before it rains. So that it has a chance for it to kind of spread out. If you just throw castings on top of your soil before, or watering, I should say, you just want to make sure that it's wet and has a chance to kind of soak it in the soil. Usually before it rains, I will go and spread a ton, or it'll be someplace where I've got the sprinkler set up to water it. I know people complain about water use. We don't have a water use issue here in Maryland. We typically, like this year, we've had I think 20 extra inches of rain, and normally we have more than enough to replenish our aquifers and everything here. And we actually, we don't get our water from the aquifer. We get it through the city, which is through reservoirs. If they get low, they do a water shortage, and they tell people that you can't water and things like that. But when we don't have that issue, we actually need to use water, so that way we're not just pumping tons of it into the Chesapeake Bay, which causes issues. So, I do recommend if you are putting it outside, you try to get it wet so those microbes and everything can work their way into the soil, or even you don't want to like dig and plow up your soil, but maybe like what I do is I'll actually dig a section up and I'll put that in, and then I'll put the dirt back on top, and that way there's a chance for it to spread out, and that way worms also that are in there, or cocoons, they can move around as well. So that's my suggestion on that. My garbage can worm farm. Okay, so this is the one that I'm guessing, my green one that I have. I still have that going. I actually emptied it out at one point. It did was filled up to the top, and I didn't harvest it in a while, and the bottom actually became this solid block of castings about an inch thick, and I couldn't get through it. So I actually had to take it outside and sort of dump everything out of it. I just let everything get chewed up in there. There was no more paper left. There was no bedding, and I ran what I could through the sorter, and then I just dumped it outside and raked it into my yard. I did start it up again. I had planned on doing a video on how everything was set up, and unfortunately, my freezer, I think I had a video on this, my freezer died. Or I should say broke at one point, and due to the amount of ice buildup in it, and I had to wait for it to thaw out, and I had tons of food scraps. I had to create systems out of thin air to basically throw all these food scraps in. So that's why I haven't shown any videos on it. I also, with these new lights, which you can see that there's nice bright lights I've got on me, I actually can do a lot better job of filming it, which has always been an issue because it's sort of in a back corner where there's no light. So maybe I'll start doing some videos on that this upcoming month. I have that loaded up with paper right now to also prevent fruit flies. So, I'll have to see how it goes, but I can definitely start doing some videos on that as well. That was a great system. And that was actually my first working system that worked really well when I bought my worms. It was surprising how it, worked out, but it did work incredibly well. So does my city have chloramines? I think there's chlorine in the water. There's definitely chlorine in the water here. I have fish tanks. I know that I add dechlorinator, and I do that a lot of times where I will let water sit in my basement for a couple of days before I actually, I think with chloramine though, I think you have to add dechlorinator, which I would recommend. You can buy those from a fish store. Just buy the cheapest one you can find. There's no reason to buy the really good ones that are for fish, which are more difficult to maintain. Like I have a tank right now, which actually I might have some video on later, because somebody did mention I have a tank that has shrimp in it. These cherry shrimp that are they're blue velvet shrimp, but they're the same thing as cherry shrimp. They're just blue, and they eat sort of the garbage out of rivers. So if you get enough of them, you can kind of throw in veggie scraps and stuff and have them eat them. So I might have some videos on that later. If people are interested, we'll see. It depends though. I bought 8 of them in November. I'm down to, I think, 4 or 5 of them now, and they have not had any babies, and they're supposed to hopefully have babies this month. Otherwise, there might be, by the end of the year, I might be ordering some more to try to get the population up. So, but yeah, for the chloramines, get some dechlorinator, just as I said, the cheapest one you can find, and that'll take them out of your water. Just, add it add it while you're into the container itself, and then put the water in, and that way it mixes it really well, and then give it about 10 minutes and it should be fine. So let's see here. Noozle Worm Farm, good morning to you as well. Okay, Ivan, I know that you've been mentioning that. Why do I keep my bins so dry? They're only dry right now because of the fruit fly issue. I typically don't keep them this dry. I add water to the top. Uh, yes, I know that it harms the fruit fly, the worms more than it does the fruit flies. But the thing is that if the more water that I add, I found that the more fruit flies I have. And I don't know if that's a cardboard issue, because I have heard from other people that fruit flies can actually live in cardboard. So the wet cardboard becomes a place where they can lay their larvae, and all of a sudden you have more issues. So I'm drying it out temporarily. Yes, there's moisture at the bottom of my system. So there is a layer that's about this deep that is very moist in the bottom, where the worms can go and stay moist. And eventually what's going to happen is I will get all of this really wet once the fruit fly issue is under control. And then I'll be mixing it in, and I'll get more food in there, and it'll be back to where it was, which is where there's moisture on the top, there's moisture dripping down, and on the sides, which is what I usually like to see. I like to see a little bit of moisture on the top, not like when I don't want the lid dripping when I take it off, but I want to be able to say, hey, there's a light mist on the cover of humidity. So I agree that it is harmful to the worms to have it that dry. I typically don't. I showed you the video where I have one bin that was really wet, and there's water in the bottom, and the worms are doing great. Another one where they're dry, and they weren't doing really well. They were very tiny and everything. So I do prefer to run my bins moist. They're just not at this time because of the fruit flies. And yes, they will be eventually much more moist. Trust me, I will. I'll get them back to that level eventually. I'm hoping actually at the end of this month, I will be probably dumping in water to moisten everything up once these fruit flies are sort of taken care of. Because they're getting through my house now, and it's noticeable. As my wife says, she's upstairs 2 floors up, and she's seeing fruit flies in the office and stuff like that while she's working. So I need that to be under control first. And there is a reason why, and I haven't posted the video yet, but I actually did a pumpkin time lapse. And I did not realize that I had this sort of in a sealed area, this large sealed area with the camera, and the fruit flies had overtaken the top of the pumpkin, which is part of the reason why it was so bad. I have that project is over, and now I'm also getting rid of the fruit flies from there. And there was tons of them, and you'll see it when I post that video. So that will hopefully solve this issue a lot more, is just the fact that I'm just taking care of these bins in a better way, and I've gotten rid of the major sources of them. So let's see, Juno, you could try growing buckwheat in your yard one year, and then you could put roots down all the way to the water table, and they basically deep till the soil for you. That is an interesting idea. I live in an HOA community that would not allow that. They don't allow you to do stuff like that. Actually, what I do want to do, though, and I can do this, is I really want to try sunflowers, giant sunflowers. I heard they put down these massive rootstocks, and then what you do is as soon as they flower and have their seeds, you cut them at their base. So, like you cut them right at the base, and then you leave the roots in the ground, and that does the same thing, I've heard. And that they will allow, because it's a temporary thing. Even though the buckwheat would be temporary, I would get massive amounts of complaints. I mean, we had, as I said, when we moved in, you couldn't grow grass here. You couldn't grow anything. And we have some neighbors that actually had fines levied against their house that they had to argue against, because of the fact that they hired a company to come in and they killed their yard. And the fines were the fact that they didn't have grass growing. And they're like, look, I just moved in. There's no dirt here, and I'm trying to grow stuff. And the fines were eventually reduced. But unfortunately, living in an HOA, there's nothing I can do about that. I could probably grow in some, like a small area, and be like, hey, it's temporary. It's just here to fix the soil. But a large area, they won't like that, especially if I'm growing it anywhere near the sidewalk. But I could do the mammoth sunflowers, which I am going to try this year. I'm actually going to start growing those probably in another month inside, to get ready to move outside this spring, and hopefully keep them. I'm going to water them. I thought I had them growing this year, and it was not. It was pumpkins that ended up growing in my yard, surprisingly, because of the pumpkin seeds that were left over in the compost, which is probably 2-year-old pumpkin seeds. I actually had these massive pumpkin plants, and these, which I let grow like crazy in my yard. I mean, it was massive. They were probably 15 feet across, or maybe 20 feet across. They were massive. I mean, they really grew well, and I was watering them a lot too, which helped. But I thought there were going to be some sunflowers. So this year I'm hoping to do the sunflowers. So let's just see here. Juno was saying, I was thinking of making a big solar distiller this year to make good water. That can work, especially if it's solar. Actually, distilled water is something that's the solar distill. Actually, if you have that, send me plans. I'd be very curious about that, because that's something that I need really for my fish tank. My water here is incredibly hard. It is loaded with minerals. And we have I do a general hardness measure, and it's an 8. And it's with my fish tank, like I get calcium deposits built up all over it unless I add distilled water. So I actually buy distilled water to mix in with my water for my fish tank because of how hard my water is here. So I'd be very curious. I'll have to look up plants for that as well. That might be a project for me to look into to see about removing some of these minerals from my water for, adding to plants and stuff, because I'm just adding minerals, tons of minerals to my water. So Ivan, so try sprinkler into a cap, and you'll see how little water you put in. 30 seconds sprinkling. 3 caps of water per week. Extensive water goes beneath the bin, and I collect it and put it back. 30 seconds with my sprayer is a lot of water. I'll test it, but I bet it's like a cup to 2 cups of water. I mean, this isn't a small sprayer that I'm using. I mean, I have another sprayer that doesn't really spray a whole lot, but this one puts out a lot of water in 30 seconds. And I should probably test it out and see. And it depends how much air pressure you put in. Normally I pump it up quite a bit when I'm using it, but it puts out a lot of water very quickly. So, I'll show that maybe in one of my next videos. I'll do a test with that. For what it's worth, Coco Coir is 20% oxygen molecules by weight, as well as extra salts in it. The combo reduces fly eggs. Now, what's interesting, I've heard of the Coco Coir where you need to actually wash it because of the salts in it, salts are bad for worms. I mean, like, it dries them out, which is bad. They breathe through their skin and they need that moisture, which is why moisture is so important. The Coco Coir that I have is actually, I think, supposed to be pretty good because there's very little salts in it from everything I've read. I buy mine at Walmart, and typically I wait till like the fall when it's on sale. I think it's like $8 or $10 a brick, and by the end of the year, it's $2 a brick. And I'll buy it then. I haven't been using it because I've been trying so many different things, and I have so much cardboard to use because of all the stuff we have shipped to the house now because of the pandemic. So I have more than enough cardboard, but I do have multiple bricks of Coco Coir here. And yeah, the stuff that you buy online, you have to be careful. It can be really salty and actually burn your worms. So you do have to be careful. If you see them leaving, it could be bad. So yeah, I will be making my bins more moist, Ivan. As I said, yeah, I know that they're dry. I don't like to keep them that dry, but it's a necessary thing because the next step is my wife complaining and me moving this stuff outside and killing all the worms in the cold weather. I mean, they're not going to survive, 20-degree weather. So I kind of had to do what I have to do to alleviate the issue. I mean, I do spend a lot of time vacuuming them up too. I open up the bins, I vacuum any that I see that are in the air. I have traps around the house. I have my sticky traps that I have, and then I haven't bought the hanging ones again. I did find that those work really well. And then I do find my bug light works incredibly well for just sort of maintaining, because there's always like a couple fruit flies, but if you have a bin that has like 3 or 4 of them, you put the bug light over it, and then within a week, they're all gone. I found it works really well. Yeah, so I will have a pumpkin time-lapse video coming, and I actually had to buy a new camera because my old camera died. I don't know if you could tell, but some of my last couple of videos, they're not quite as focused, and it's because my camera, the lens had died, or not the lens, the shutter had died in it, and it wasn't doing quite as well taking photos, so they're getting more and more blurry as it went. And the last couple of videos I might redo. So I had one on coffee grounds, which was okay, but not great, that I posted. I might redo that one. And then there's another one that I did on birdseed, ground up birdseed. And that one I really need to redo. Because when I was looking at it, after I posted it and everything, I was like, it looks really blurry. It just looks like a white blob compared to what it should be. So I do have a new camera that I'll be using, and I hopefully won't burn out quite as quickly. The last one I had it for 10 years, and I'd taken it around, and it had probably been damaged from all the stuff I did. So I will have some more time-lapse videos. Again, if you have suggestions, I'll put a comment in my my next video. I do see comments. I do try to react to them, but I'll post an actual message in my community section to say, hey, if you have ideas, let me know for different time lapses you'd like to see. I lost a couple that I tried with different ways. I tried using a GoPro. It looked kind of horrible. I felt it was too. It didn't work the way I wanted, and it had like a black line going through it because of the rolling shutter on it. I tried using a cell phone. It kept cutting out. I lost days of footage, or hour here, hour there, and then it would, be down for like 6 hours for no reason. It would tell me it was working. So I've gone back to the camera, which just seems to be a very steady way to do it. So we'll see how this goes. But the pumpkin one I do have almost ready. It just takes a long time to edit since it was 500 gigabytes of photos to go through for the computer to process. So it takes a little bit of time to put out there. So yeah, I do a lot of research on this stuff. Actually, that's what I Juno. That's why I have a lot of knowledge. I mean, I have to admit, not everything I say is perfect either. As Ivan says, I'm showing my bins dry. They shouldn't be dry. They should be wet. So I don't do everything perfectly, but I've done a lot of research on stuff, and I continually try to do more. I'm constantly looking at videos, and I did a lot of this because I wanted to test and see what worked and what didn't. So, like originally when I started this channel, I think like 6 years ago, there was nobody that had channels like this. There was people who put out channels, but it was pictures. They didn't have any videos of what they were doing. And when I first started, I mean, I didn't know anything about really videos or editing or any of that. And actually, I didn't have any way to edit it. My computer wasn't powerful enough. It was basically like me just taking the video and uploading it. And over the years, I've developed more knowledge as I've continued this. I've read books. There's a ton of literature out there you can read. And I've been doing that, trying to keep up. And then a lot of times, mistakes are the mother of invention. Like my fish tank, I killed all the fish in it multiple times until I realized that the hardness of my water is different than when I was a kid and growing up in a different area. The hardness was very different. So like the fact that I did massive water changes and everything, the water wasn't that hard. It was fine. But here, at a hardness of 8, it just quickly builds up with minerals and kills everything. I mean, I didn't know I was doing that, but I was. So it's knowledge is necessary when you make mistakes, and you strive to get better at it. And that's what I try to do. I try to learn more, so I do a better job of taking care of the soil. I grew up with a dad who was a chemical engineer, and he dumped a lot of chemicals on the yard. He sort of stopped doing that as he realized, well, maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. His yard looked great, but essentially it was just chemicals that were maintaining everything. It wasn't a soil biome. He ran a compost heap for years with me there, and then he did a worm bin, and his garden is phenomenal. He can grow anything in it. In fact, he put down potatoes that he had in the compost. They grew into plants because of the fact that it was just such healthy soil. So, we have to strive to make ourselves better, and that comes with learning. So that's what I continually try to do. Oh yeah. Yours is super hard water. Yeah. I think that's a lot of places actually have hard water because I think it's easier it takes a lot to filter it. So, it is what it is. But I thought typically on the West Coast, I think in Oregon and stuff like that, I've heard people that they have issues with the fact that it's the opposite, where there's like no mineral content in the water. So, more weirdo. You're drowning in cardboard too. Yeah, it's been. We get these massive boxes from Sam's Club because I ordered, like, the store's been out of stuff as well. So a lot of these things are now coming in through the mail. So I just have tons and tons of cardboard, and some of it I can't even use because it's like plastic coated, which I don't really like to use. I'd much rather have or wax coated, and that takes a long time to break down. But I still have tons of cardboard just from the packages that isn't. So we just have a lot more stuff coming through the mail, and so we have a lot of cardboard that we've been going through. Juno, you want a Bokashi time lapse? All right. Now, it is interesting you were saying that. Now, I can't do a time lapse per se because I can't keep it open unless I have maybe if I had a glass container or a plastic clear container, I could do that, but I don't have one big enough. But I actually just edited together, and I was going to post it this week, of a third try at Bokashi. And instead of doing the separate videos weekly, I decided I just took all the videos and I added it together from beginning to end. It's about an hour-long video. And yeah, I'm going to be posting it this week. And it actually shows, instead of doing the 2-bucket system, it's a single bucket. I put a ton of cardboard and some pellets in the bottom to absorb any moisture, put in Bokashi, and then I just filled the thing up within like 3 weeks, let it sit for a couple weeks, and then I dumped it into my castings. And that's why you saw the bones in. I actually recorded this about 6 months ago, and I just haven't had time to edit it together because of the length of it. And I will have that out later this week, hopefully. I just finished, I just actually rendered it this weekend. So it is coming out. It's perfect timing on that. But yes, it will be. There's another bokashi try that I'm testing out here. So deworms vermicomposting. I've seen you post a lot lately, and thank you for watching my videos and commenting. Yeah, the best lessons are when you make mistakes, and this is something that I'm trying to teach my kids. Actually, I've given I bought my son a lot of things to take apart electronics. Something that I did as a kid. Actually, my parents didn't let me. I sort of did and would take apart. Like I took apart a record player. I took apart my Walkman. I would take apart things when it would break and learn how they worked. And that's how you learn. Also, is and then you try to put it back together. And that's an interesting way to do it too. So my son, actually, I bought him the iFixit toolkit so he could take apart. We have some old cell phones and tablets. I was like, why don't you take them apart and see how they all fit together and see how it works? That's some of the best ways to learn something is to really have hands-on experience. And actually, we had a Xbox controllers that died. Like one of the shoulder buttons here, the died, or the controller broke in that area, and he took it apart. He's actually taking an engineering course in high school, and he took it apart and was able to put it back together and have it working. That button's broken itself. That's never going to work again unless we replace the part underneath. But he's like, I could do that now if you want. We could buy that part, but I think it's like $25, and we get this controller working again. And we might do that. It's at $25. It's a little bit expensive, when it's a $50 controller. When the other side will probably go just as fast. So, but I do think that learning from your mistakes or deconstructing something is a great way to learn. And it's one of the things that I encourage. I killed my first batch of worms. I mean, I did. I've killed worms before. I have posted a video which people have thumbs down like crazy of a dead worm bed. It had too much moisture and it died. And I didn't mean to do that. I mean, it wasn't like I was like, I'm going to kill this worm bed and post a video. I didn't do that. It was just happened to be that I had a bad system of tracking my bins at the time where I had stacks, and it was at the bottom of a stack and it just never got revitalized. Wasn't adding cardboard. I wasn't adding food, and I ended up killing it. And I feel bad about it, but at the same time, it was a great learning experience for me on labeling my bins so I track them a little better, which is what I've done. I've gotten a lot better at tracking stuff. And, building my compost sorting machine that I have, like for that right there, I had to, it was trial and error at first because I didn't have, it's not like I just wanted to go out and buy, $400 worth of brand new wood and everything to build it. I was using what I had, and I bought a couple pieces, but it was a trial and error to get it to work. So it says here in my new soil farm, not allowed to catch rainwater. Have you given up on chicken bones? I'm still trying chicken bones. I'm going to get these, even if I have to heat them, grind them up. They're going to go in my bins at some point. And that's I'm also have a thing of oyster shells that I have that I still have to get rid of as well, which, that's where my fruit fly problem originally came from, is my parents had oysters and they gave me the shells in this styrofoam container that they came in when they ordered them. And I thought it was a sealed container, and it was not. It was actually, there was a hole in it. And when I opened it up in my basement, a massive ton of fruit flies came out of it. And that's where they came from. So it wasn't from my food or my bins or some mistake I made. It was just, that's the way it was. And then I took it outside and opened it up outside and dumped them. And, they smelled horrible because they still had some, like, when you clean an oyster, you don't always get off all the stuff. So it was, they smelled incredibly horrible. And I had to soak them in vinegar to kind of dissolve all of the meat on them, so that way they could be used. And I actually have to clean them now again with some fresh water, and then I'm going to grind them up and put them in my bins as the plan. But I plan to do the same thing with chicken bones. I actually have a partial video that I did. I actually put them in a pressure cooker that I had for an hour, the chicken bones, and then I was going to grind them up and put them in my bins, or at least break them apart and see if they break down faster. Like I can't imagine that this is something that I still have to just throw out every time. It feels like such a waste, of something that should be good for my soil, but I need to be able to put it in. I think bokashi does work well with it, but it's just, I think they need to be softer. I think they will need to be, boiled in a pressure cooker or something, which I've done before to make a bone broth, which is really good. I typically use my turkeys actually after Christmas and Thanksgiving. I will actually boil the bones down and make a turkey broth. And it's just, you put it in the fridge in a big container and you take it out and it looks like gelatin. It's so solid. You can shake it and everything and it jiggles. And it's amazing though how good it is once you like make soup with that. I've done that before. I've done that, and I'll freeze half of it. I'll make soup, and we just add regular soup vegetables from the store, and we'll add some of the cooked turkey. Like when you boil the bones down, some of the turkey's left over. We'll throw that back in, and it's just phenomenal soup. It's so thick and delicious. So we try to do stuff like that to reuse stuff. We try to use up what we have. We try not to just chuck everything out. So, New Soil Farm, I am allowed to catch rainwater here. But there are rules and regulations about where things are allowed to be placed, as far as it can't be like road facing typically. And unfortunately, I do own a corner lot. So my entire house is almost road facing, except for one corner because we own a corner house. So, and yeah, the HOAs are good and bad. Mine's not too bad. They've been kind of particular lately, but they can also be really good because, there's some people that, are perfectly fine. I mean, we've had, neighbors that were just like, man, I'm not going to cut my yard anymore and just let it grow like crazy and let thistles grow and all this. I mean, stuff that's like dangerous to grow or, invasive weeds grow. And they prevent that as well. So, and ours is pretty lenient. Typically there's times where they're overzealous, but mine isn't too bad. So. All right, let's just see here. So, Joe No, good morning. I see your constant fight with insects. I deal with fungus gnats. Are you sure your issue is fruit flies? I am pretty sure. I answered this before. I'm pretty sure it's fruit flies. There might be some fungus gnats, but that's where, I'm not seeing them quite as much. Like I'm definitely finding when I kill them that these are fruit flies. And I vacuum up a lot of them too. That's one of the things I do use my shop vac for. And I actually bought a new shop vac just recently. I got a battery powered one because I only have one outlet in my basement and I have like 85 things plugged into it. So I decided I should probably use batteries a little bit more. And that way I can go around without dragging around a massive cord or having it flip over. So I bought actually a rigid battery powered shop vac, which I'm very happy with since I have so many rigid batteries anyhow. But I'm pretty sure that these are fruit flies. they're definitely bigger. I think fungus gnats are much smaller. And maybe there are some fungus gnats, but they're not as invasive. They're not as prevalent that I'm seeing. They're definitely the fruit flies that I am seeing. So worm weirdo. I leave chicken bones in my compost piles. They take about 2 years before they become brittle. If left in the blazing sun, even faster. Yes, that is one thing I have debated is building sort of like, during the summer here especially, I could throw stuff in like a solar cooker, like out of aluminum foil, and if reflect the sunlight and probably get this up to 100 degrees. I mean the especially in the summer though. I mean it's already 100. It'd be 90 degrees outside, and then you could redirect the sunlight into something. I could probably cook stuff like that, and actually not like usually I use it in my oven or stuff like that. But if I could cook it outside, that might not be a bad idea to maybe look at some directions and build one of those just for doing that. During the summer, I could save up the bones in the freezer and then just during the summer throw them all in there because we don't have too much chicken bones really. We usually buy chicken breasts or thighs or something like that are pre-boned. But we do buy chicken wings every once in a while to make or full chickens themselves. But it's just not frequent enough where it would make a difference. But that might not be a bad idea to build a solar cooker for something like that. So I'm not using fuel, with gas or electricity. So. And yeah, bones are a great source of calcium. New soil worm farm, they're a very good source of calcium, and that's actually why I do boil them down a lot of times because that bone broth then has the minerals in it, which is what's really good for you. Bone broth is supposed to be phenomenal for you just in general, and I can't stress this enough about using stuff as much as you can before you throw it out or use it in your bins. Like I try not to have stuff go bad. I try to use it in other ways first. Like when spinach, we buy big containers of spinach. Typically we use it all, but sometimes it goes bad faster than others. Sometimes it'll last a week. Other times it'll be like in 3 days it starts going bad. And at that point we throw it on a saute pan and try to saute it all, knowing that it shrinks down and we can eat it. Or I'll juice it, knowing that when you juice things, you're getting rid of the fiber, the pulp. And we've tried doing some stuff with it that hasn't worked out as well. But the pulp then goes into my bins, and that's great food for worms. That pulp that's pre-juiced. So, it is amazing what you can do with some of these leftover pieces to really get something that out of them before you throw them away. So yeah, they're much smaller. Yeah, the fungus gnats are definitely much smaller. And I could have a couple of them down here, but I'm not seeing them prevalently. I mean, the ones that I see are typically easily seen, and they're bigger. The fungus gnats, because I've had them once before in pots upstairs, like in my planters, and I haven't seen anything in those, which is normally where I notice that I've fungus gnat issues. But I've noticed that they're really small, and like they're really, it almost looks like you would think that it's not even a bug. You would think that it's like, is there something in my eye, or something like that, before you think it's a bug, until you realize it's still flying around you. And I'm not seeing that. These are big enough where like I can squish them, and they're pretty solid. So, but yeah. So far that's if anybody else has any questions, let me know. I think that's the end of. I hit the end of the chat already, which is surprising. Normally, a little bit more. You guys are a little bit more talkative a lot than the last time, but we'll see. As I said, I'm planning to do this every month, first Saturday of the month. I'll try to get better about posting something to go to remind people, so we get more people online. But we'll see how this continues to go. Okay, so new soil worm farm. I got to go and harvest some ENCs. All right, great. Keep plugging away at it. Be a warm whisperer soon. I hope so. I mean, that's one thing. I know that there's a lot of companies that chime in on here that are harvesting and selling. I decided not to do that. I should probably do a video on that. For me, it's not worthwhile. For other people, it is. Where I live is fairly expensive, and I don't have the land for it, and I don't have I want to say, it doesn't make sense for me, the opportunity cost. I actually graduated in economics, and the opportunity cost, I developed an entire business plan around raising worms and like quitting my job and everything. And it's right on the cusp, but it's just not quite enough in this area to make it worthwhile. So that's why I haven't done it. And that's why, like, I'm sure you've noticed on my videos, I now actually have a affiliate that I use that I recommend to buy worms from. But of course, anybody else on here, I can't speak to everyone, but if you're looking to buy worms, please use my affiliate link. If not, if you're looking to buy worms from somebody else, please let me know what your experience is like too. I mean, as I said, I'm not going to name names here because I don't like to do that, but the first place I ordered worms from, they were not what I ordered. And it was devastating because I thought it was me until I ordered some worms locally. And I was able to go pick them up and confirm sort of that they were the red wigglers that I was ordering. And then they worked great. In fact, although I was worried at first because they gave me, I think, 20 pounds of like compost with the worms. So I didn't see worms for months. And I was like, well, geez, I don't know if this is working or not. They're not eating any of the food, but are they there? But they eventually, all of a sudden, they just took over. The problem was he'd give me 20 pounds of compost with the worms. And with that, they just took a long time to go through it because it was only 3 pounds of worms that I got. So, but all right, bye, Joe Nono. Have a great weekend to you too. And we're almost here at the end, an hour. I think it's sort of wrapping up here. So I'm going to say goodbye as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And for those of you that maybe watch later, thank you for watching. And if you have questions, please post comments. And I'll be back again next month. This is February 2021, so I'll be back again in March. I will try to post more of a warning that I'll be going live next month to remind everybody. I think I posted it last night, and it wasn't much of a warning for everyone. So thank you for watching, and have a great weekend.